Hi. Okay, this week I want to talk to you about a different way of dealing with organizational constructs. The title of this particular lesson is called Yes and it takes on a kind of unlikely scenario. If you've read all of this week's assigned readings, then you will have already read the one about teamwork. Teamwork is fantastic. But teamwork is fairly ordinary. We talk about teams in organizations all the time. What I want to do, though, is take this to the next level to suggest to you that there is an even better way of having organizations, people in organizations work together, and that is through an ensemble effort rather than through teamwork. And in order to do this, we're going to frame it with one of my favorite avocations. That's improvisation. A primary rule in leadership is that none of us is as smart as all of us. But very often as leaders we ignore or otherwise miss valuable ideas and input from those who are in our command. The top-down hierarchy of most organizations doesn't encourage initiatives from the lower ranks. But listen, we turn a deaf ear at our peril. If we foster an atmosphere of playing as an ensemble with trusted counterparts, we're likely to learn more, innovate more, and achieve more. Certainly, we are likely to improve morale because everybody wants to feel like an important part of a group in which we are contributing. So, here are some of the rules of improvisation. So I'll give you these first and then we'll talk about how we're going to put these into action. Here they are. Number 1, be in the moment. Number 2, be honest with yourself. Number 3, be honest with others. 4, put it out there. 5, listen. 6, play nicely. And 7, agree and take it up a notch. Now, if you use these 7 skills of improvisation, which I will explain as we go forward, you're going to find that your organization actually works so much better. That the big problem maybe is in encouraging and fostering the sort of atmosphere that will permit improvisation and for organizations to excel to their highest abilities. If you use these 7 elements of improvisation, you're going to find fresh, unconventional, and inspiring ways to generate more ideas quickly, to communicate more effectively, to create ensembles that rise to every occasion, to create open dialogue with employees and with customers, to break down organizational silos that threaten collaborative success, and to make something out of nothing. And that is exactly what we do in improvisation. We make stuff up. We make something out of nothing. So let's first now describe what it means to improvise. Using the guidelines of theatrical improvisation, we can create ensembles out of our workforce. Now, ensembles are defined as a group of musicians or actors or dancers who perform together, generally speaking, or as a group of items viewed as a whole rather than individually. Now, wouldn't we want our organizations to be groups that perform together as a whole rather than as individuals? So let's agree that an ensemble is the sum of all parts of a thing taken together so that each part is only considered in relation to the whole. So with that being said, let's distinguish the difference between teams and ensembles. There's absolutely nothing wrong with teams, but the word does not imply the depth and the shared accountability that comes with a high-functioning ensemble. Generally, we think of teams as being sports-related. They ideally play together and work as a unit. So far, so good. Inherent in the team analogy is the idea that the team is playing against another team. Okay, fair enough. Most organizations operate in a competitive landscape, so there is often an adversary. Teams also have coaches, captains, and people who play in specified positions, even strings of starters, and those who wait on the bench. So too do organizations have hierarchies. And in a hierarchy, orders come down from above. Just as in a sports team, say a football team, the quarterback calls the play. In baseball, the pitcher may want to consult with the catcher, but the outfielder has no input on what pitch is thrown. And that's actually the big part of equating a sports team to an organization. The model is probably valid in many organizations. They do tend to resemble sports teams much more than they do ensemble. But think of the possibilities if we used a completely different model that didn't have the same hierarchy. Here's why ensembles are better than teams. Ensembles also have members who are an expert in one area or another. You aren't likely to see a bass player in a jazz ensemble suddenly playing a xylophone. But in a small music ensemble, a conductor may not even be a parent. Leadership becomes a shared responsibility in performance. There is no top-down in an ensemble. Each member contributes fairly and equally. So using the analogy of a small jazz ensemble without a conductor, some of the most innovative and creative music can occur. Now that doesn't mean that there isn't leadership, but it's a shared leadership. It's collaborative in nature. Organizations with strong hierarchies are not particularly good at collaboration internally. They hire the best people they can, and then they tell them what to do, and then they don't listen to them. In an ensemble, no one competes with anyone else in the group, and the ensemble is not concerned with external competition. Only the quality of the performance itself matters, and for its own merits. Now, how much better would organizations function, and how much more cooperative and creative and innovative would they be if they just used an ensemble approach rather than a team approach? So, why yes and? What is that all about? Well, yes and is the first rule of improvisation, and it is the key to why ensembles really are so much better than teams. No and yes but are popular in the work world because they allow one party to maintain control of an idea or conversations. Think of how this would work in improvisation. All right, so let's look at this. Pretend I'm two people right now. I don't have split screen technology, so you're going to have to do just like you would if I was in the classroom and imagine this. So I'm going to be two different people, and we're going to be creating a comedic improvisation scene. So person one gets up. Now it always starts with a declaration. So person one speaks. "Ah, it's a beautiful day." Now if person two says, "No, it isn't. It sucks. It's a terrible day," then person one has to come back and respond to that in some way. "Well, sure, it's a beautiful day. Look at the sun is shining." And then person two says, "No, it sucks. Everything's bad, and and we've got COVID, and we've got Black Lives Matter people out protesting, and we've got an election with two people that are terrible, or whatever, So basically what we've done, we set ourselves up for an argument between one and two. Now that may work really well if we were doing a dramatic scene where we have an author who decides how this conflict is going to evolve. However, if we are just making this stuff up, then neither party really knows where it's going to go, and all we've got is a fight going on. Not very entertaining. So let's go back, rewind. Now let's start that scene over again. Person one says, "It's a beautiful day." Now person two, if he's following the rules of improv, must agree with the first person. Whatever they say, it goes. So that is the yes part of yes and. The other part, and, means you take it up a step further. You say something beyond what that person did, adding to the scene. What that does then is that the next person has something else to build on. Again, yes and, yes and, yes and, yes and. So, we've got this. "It's a beautiful day today." Yes, and it makes it a great day to do my first skydive. See how we build it up? Now all of a sudden, person one says, oh yes, we're skydiving. All I said is it's a beautiful day. You've said yes, and we're going to go skydiving. So person one then says yes, and I sure hope we don't spill our beers on the way down. Okay, so now he's yes-anded the second person and created an even newer level. They're both drinking, maybe even drunk as they're jumping out of a plane. You know, maybe person two says something about, well, I sure hope we don't forget our parachutes, or something like that. Yeah, anyway, we can keep building on it. See how it works? So yes and is one of the most important rules that we can learn for improvisation. And it translates very well to organizations. Why? I will explain. The idea here is that by saying yes and, it helps you acknowledge an idea and gives you a chance to encourage another person to reach a little bit further. Another good reason why this is great for organizations is it can motivate teams when developing new ideas and initiatives. And third, it levels the boss-subordinate communication by leveling the playing field. Perhaps the most obvious place you can apply yes and is in an ideation or a brainstorming session. If you've ever done brainstorming, you know that one of the rules of that is any idea is good for now. When people brainstorm, the worst thing we can do is say that's a stupid idea. So there's this much of yes and is common practice in the most progressive organizations. Where it fails to achieve is in the second part, the and part. If we brainstorm and get some ideas, the general rule is to set a time limit on brainstorming, and then we take a break, review the items we've recorded for consideration, cross off the ones we think aren't good. But a better approach might be to build on the ideas, even the crazy ones. Why? Because that's where innovation can be found. We've all heard the stories. They thought Edison was crazy, Einstein was a fool, Steve Jobs was impractical. The best, most innovative, most world-changing ideas sounded crazy at first. If we hope to find the next light bulb or the next theory of relativity, the next personal computer, we must be brave enough to embrace the ideas that sound a little bit crazy and build on them. How about this? You know what? We should build a phone that's small enough to fit inside your pocket. Yes, and we should put a camera in it so people will always have cameras wherever they go. Yes, and you know what? It should be more than that. It should be a computer that's inside your pocket. Can you imagine how crazy this all might have sounded to somebody, say, in 1998? You know? Yeah, and yet that's what we have now, isn't it? So the yes-anding process could have actually worked for innovation, and in fact, I'll bet you that this is exactly the sort of conversation that went on in the early days of Apple. That doesn't mean every idea is ultimately a good one. There's a time to parse and dissect and discard some ideas, but the yes-and approach suggests that we can take our ideas and embrace them, nourish them, and let them grow and see what happens. In performance improvisation, we don't have time for no but. We're making this up as we go along, and we're doing it in front of an audience. We don't know what's going to happen. We may fail, or we may soar to new heights. What would it look like if we took that approach in organizations? If we truly want to be on the cutting edge, we must not be afraid to get cut. The idea of yes and suggests that people play well together. A good ensemble will learn individual strengths and talents, and it draws upon them. Ensembles embrace change better than teams do. Team members can certainly change and survive, even thrive. But an ensemble approach puts less emphasis on individual members because there's no star center, and thus can endure changes in the individual makeup a little bit better. In a stage ensemble, players together make up a whole greater than the diversity of their skills and their personalities. The ensemble is defined by how they work together as a group, not on an individual basis. Be in the moment. If you're in a space where you are expected to bring your creative voice, it's vital that you stay in the moment. No interruptions, no texts, no phone calls. Pay attention and listen carefully. Seek first to understand. Improvisation calls for listening intently to everything. It calls for paying attention with all of your senses. You can't think about what happened last night or what you're going to do later. It calls for your total submersion. Leadership in an organization demands the same sort of attentiveness. Honesty. In improvisation, we don't have time to create great backstories about our characters or to take on strange or bizarre affects. You know, we may play old or with a foreign accent or some other sort of a character affect, but we only have seconds to decide. And from the moment we commit, everything we do must be honest because we're living in the moment and we only invent things from that which is organic. In organizations, if we are truly in the moment, we are much more likely to be honest. We don't have time for agendas or office politics. We are spontaneous and more alive because we take an honest, straightforward approach. We also need to surrender the need to be right. The need to be right among individuals, institutions, and organizations is one of the biggest barriers to an ensemble approach to creativity and innovation. Think about the most difficult people you've encountered in your organization. Did they have an agenda? Did they have a my way or the highway attitude? Did they listen to anybody's voices but their own? Chances are they had an insatiable need to be right and would rather be angry at everyone else than surrender an inch. If you can create an ensemble where everybody agrees to surrender the need to be right, you will increase productivity by leaps and bounds. One improv exercise to encourage people to let go of the need to be right is to eliminate the word no from their vocabulary. For just one day, they have to say yes, and then they have to say and in response to whatever is said to them. The kind of person that I just described, it's going to kill them, but it could be a cathartic experience. And you should know that I've done this, consulting with a couple of corporations, several corporations around this area. I've done some work, and one of the hardest things I've ever done with one of our potential ensemble members was convincing a CEO that she should refrain from saying no for an entire day. She said it was the hardest thing she ever did, and yet at the end of it, she said that she found that it actually increased her ability to listen to employees and to actually consider new innovations that actually helped her out a lot. So it can be an important thing. So what if we fail? Winston Churchill said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." Failure does present opportunities. The history of innovation is riddled with examples of happy accidents. The pacemaker was initially supposed to be a device that lowered body temperature through the use of radio frequency. The slinky was supposed to be machinery for part of a battleship. That's disputed history, but fireworks were apparently the result of a kitchen experiment gone wrong in ancient China. In improvisation, we fail all the time. We enter a blank stage. We know we're about to perform, but we have no script. Our only preparation is we know that we are going to play some games that we've played before, but we don't know what's going to happen. We know the audience will make suggestions, and then we are going to have to create something out of that suggestion. Well, needless to say, sometimes we fail. We fail in public, right in front of everyone. We fail together as an ensemble. We fail fast. It happens in seconds or moments. We fail free of judgment. Very often, these are the funniest and most memorable moments in improvisation. And we fail with confidence because we're not afraid to fail, because we always learn something new from failure. We also fail incrementally because it is usually just small failures in the grand scheme of things. All organizations have some record of failure. The most innovative ones have some of the biggest failures. Think of Apple, the most profitable company in the world, at least until maybe Amazon now. But in the 1980s, after inventing the idea of personal computers, Apple rejected the idea of licensing its operating system to other computer makers, the way Microsoft did. And in the world of business, to this day, it belongs to Windows, not Mac. But you know the rest of the story. The iPod, the iPhone, and so much more. Apple's key to surviving failure was to continue to innovate, while Microsoft, well, do you know anybody who owns a Windows cell phone? Another important rule in improvisation is to follow the follower. Leadership is more about understanding status than about maintaining status. It's about recognizing the great power of giving up the role of top dog once in a while. On any given day, in any given project, an employee might assume a leadership role, or provide support, or you look for resources outside the group. Your organization will be strong when it no longer relies on a single leader to initiate every new idea, but rather enables the creative minds of all of its members to participate in the company's ongoing growth. Co-creation and listening are also important concepts. Improvisation is all about collaboration. Using the improv model to organizational psychology, we can benefit by bringing these principles to our organizations. Find the idea, not your idea. Seed control. Eradicate fear of failure, of looking foolish, of the unknown. Likewise, there are rules against certain behaviors that will subvert creativity and innovation. We have rules against aggression, yelling, or waffling. Co-creation is not something you do just with your own ensemble members, though. In performance improvisation, we're often fed by the audience suggestions. That's a vital element for organizations, too. The best kind of audience interaction we can get in organizations is just like an audience in an improv show. It's live, unfiltered, and spontaneous. Sure, we can look at customer feedback cards and letters and emails. We can conduct customer satisfaction surveys, but the purest form of feedback is delivered in real time when there is no time to screen the content from the analysis. To do this, we must listen to our external audience. If we are doing well, then we will hear the applause. If we don't get the response we hope for, then we can make adjustments. This process is spontaneous and authentic. Another important concept is agility and the reverence-revere dynamic. Respect is esteem for or a sense of worth or excellence of a person, a personal quality or an ability. To revere is to regard someone with respect tinged with awe and venerate. Respect is to be encouraged. Reverence, not so much. If we respect our fellow players in our ensemble, we encourage them to be the best that they can be. But if we revere them, we may open ourselves to abuse and neglect. Further, if we respect our organization's product, service, and mission, we hold it in esteem. But if we're too reverent to our product or service, while embarking on innovation, we will be too timid to take on substantial change. Albert Einstein respected the laws of physics and math, but he didn't revere Newton's law so much that he wasn't compelled to prove new and different relationships between natural phenomena that better explained how the universe works. Improv ensembles also must be agile and willing to take on change eagerly. So too must organizations. An organization that lasts, that grows, that innovates, is nimble, and is responsive. This is the best form of an organization. One way we can train for this agility is through the Take That Back game. And that's a fun game. In fact, I really wish I could play these games with you. If we were meeting in person, that's exactly what we would be doing, is playing some improv games. How fun is that? The Take That Back game is a game you may have seen done somewhere else. But you're doing a scene and the moderator might ring a bell and say, take that back. And whatever the person said just a moment ago, that person has to change it and elevate it. And you might get 2 or 3 rings to take that back. So you might say, okay, and I'm making this up right now, Oh, gee, that's a lovely tie you have on. Ding, take that back. Oh, gee, that's a lovely skirt you have on. Ding, take that back. Oh, gee, that is a lovely mask of Richard Nixon you have on. So, again, you keep taking it back. Now, those weren't really particularly funny, but I'm not really warmed up in my funniness mode here. But the idea, you get the idea. Take that back. Change it up all the time. We can do this in ensembles to make more creative suggestions. A leader's role in an organization is recognizing the shift from a hierarchical leadership model to a flat one. Knowing when to lead and when to follow, and when to just get out of the way. Trusting the ensemble, talking to the audience, and being prepared for quick changes are all part of this process. So, here are some general guidelines that will translate well from improvisational theater to organizational psychology. Look at people in the eye when you meet them. Smile. Don't check your text or emails when someone is talking to you. Be curious. Try to eliminate the word no from your vocabulary for just one day. When you are wrong, acknowledge it, say you're sorry, and move on. Forgive yourself and forgive others. Lead as you would want to be led. Don't be an asshole and don't abide assholes. Be on time. Excel at preparation. Ask yourself, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Make your partner look good. Respect, but don't revere. Listen to the whole person. Read the room. Share the conversation. Love your work. Applaud others. Say we rather than I whenever possible. Consider that you may not be right. Open your door. Don't work out of fear. Work from a sense of possibility. Understand the audience you're trying to win over and give them a role. Be an improviser. Remember, improv should be fun. An audience loves to watch someone having fun. By letting go of fear and failure, we commit more, we focus more, and we become more of ourselves fully. So if we were in a classroom setting, among the things I would do is play some of these games. Word at a time story. This would be if we got together and we had, say, just 3 people, and we would say one word, and we would try to cooperate with each other to build a cohesive story. So person 1 might say once, 2, upon, 3, a, 4, time. Okay, fairly standard, not that exciting, but it can get better as it goes. However, what if I say once, upon, a, frog? Okay, well, that's an interesting twist. As long as it isn't out to subvert the story, you're actually kind of yes-anding it a little bit. Building a story word at a time is a great way to sort of dip your toe into the water of improvisation. You could also do this sentence at a time, too. The Take That Back game I just played with you a little bit, or showed you how that works. But there are many other games, too. The gibberish game, where 2 people may talk to one another in gibberish, and 2 other people interpret what they say. And, of course, they're just making it up. We play a game that just warms us up called Zip, Zap, Zop. And basically, this is just people standing around in a circle, and one says zip and points to somebody, and that person says zap and points to another person, and then that person says zop and points to another person. It gets moving really quickly, and what this does is sort of frees your mind up from all the noise that is rattling around in your head, and really puts you into the moment. There are a lot of different games that I've played with students in the past, including a 5-minute story, like where we might tell a story that's a famous story and try to do it in 5 minutes, acting it out with the narrator, sort of directing other members of the ensemble to act out these parts. And of course, the other members of the ensemble never argue with the narrator. They do what the narrator directs them to do. And if you want to continue that ensemble approach, you might even change actors and narrators halfway through, because nobody is a leader. So I hope that this has at least given you some idea of how improvisation works and how it can be applied to organizations. If you'd like to learn more about this, there's an excellent book which has the same title as this lesson, called Yes and. It was put together by some professional improvisers and also sketch comedy writers and performers from the Second City. So if you'd like to learn more about this and its business applications, it's out there for you, and I highly recommend reading it. It's really entertaining, and it might change the way you approach your work. Great. See you next week.